but I will also give you the power to turn that way if you want. But there's going to be a lot of resistance. I'm going to heavily insist that you don't go this way. Like, what do we want God to do? Do we want it to be that we do not lose our form at all? Like we're indestructible. There's nothing that can hurt us. So if we come up with a rule and say, well, nothing should lose anything, well, boom, it would have just been pre-Big Bang forever. And that, like, whatever was the first thing would have just been forever, and that was it, right? So why does God allow evil? Why, if God is all loving and all merciful, why does God allow evil to befall his creation? You know, those are the deep questions that I've had. And as I've meditated, not necessarily on this question, but just what I have observed through meditation has given me some insights to answer this question. And for me, the answer is evil is a natural outcome of the fundamental forces of the universe, right? So first, let's define evil. Evil, to me, very simplistic. You know, I know I'm talking about God, but I'm gonna make it a very simple thing and then try to see why an all-knowing creator would allow this. So evil is the deliberate intent to cause or inflict suffering on a sentient being, and the intention is coming from a sentient being. So it's basically sentient being on sentient being, harm, destruction, all of that good stuff. So when you're harmed, you know, when evil is done upon you, there is some loss. You're either physically, you might get stabbed, you might get a physical thing cut off. You know, it could be like a physical evil that's done upon you. It could be an emotional evil, right? Without it getting to physical violence, you could lose a sense of safety, you could lose a sense of security, and you could be emotionally harmed. You know, and there's social loss, there's economic loss, there's a lot of losses, right? There's a lot of harms that can be experienced when evil is done upon you. So this is one of the things, right? Evil is losing something on some level. You're losing safety, you're losing physical health, you're losing something that you cherish that you don't want to lose. So what I realized in my meditations, you know, not really directly thinking about evil and God and all this, you know, just like focusing on my breath. You know, what is loss? What is endings? What is death? You know, and so as I'm observing my breath, I used to do this meditation. I still do sometimes. Observing the breath come in and out. A natural part of every breath is that it has to end, right? Inhale comes, it has to end. If I were to say, okay, I want just the birth side, I just want my inhale to be created, I don't want it to end, well, what will happen is I'm going to stop breathing and then I'm going to die. So it must end, and the exhale has to be reborn, you know, born, and then on and on. Let's say a thought comes up, right? Thoughts are coming up, they end, right? They come into form and then they disappear, right? So every experience that we're having, loss or ending or death, is a natural part of every single phenomena of existence, right? Even outside of this experience, right? Like the molecules, the atoms and molecules that make up my body, they have gone through so many destructions, so many losses. You know, this was once a star, and that star had its constitution. It was a star, you know, not a being, but it was an object. It was a form, and it held on to that form. And then a supernova happened, right? It exploded. And that was a very violent reaction, right? And then these atoms then kind of might have coalesced into this and that, and maybe one became an asteroid. That asteroid then lived life. It had its constituency. Then it like hit a planet. It got obliterated. And so it lost its constituency, right? And then this cycle of, you know, being created, coming into a form, and then being destroyed is literally in every single molecule. It's in every single atom. It's literally in every facet of the universe, right? So this is the first one we got to come to is loss natural, right? Is losing something natural? And it is, right? Just like I've said, it's literally at the physical world, mental world, emotional world, right? Everything comes, stays for a while, and then disappears. And this is one of the lessons in Vipassana meditation, is impermanence or change. It's always constantly changing. Nothing is permanent. Nothing forms and stays like that for eternity, right? Everything comes, stays, and then goes. So when it comes to evil and you're being harmed, let's say your sense of safety is ending, right? We can separate this out, right? So I'm going to separate out into two parts. When we defined evil earlier, the first part is it has to be an intentional action from a sentient being for it to be considered evil. And then the other part is it has to inflict some harm, right? It has to cause some damage. So now we're just looking at the damage part. So let's separate out the damage part, right? So we can, from a bigger perspective, say that loss itself is an essential, natural, necessary part of the fundamental reality of everything, right? It's just fundamental. It must be. And I'm not going to go too much into, oh, what if this universe, things only formed and they never disappeared? Well, that would be inconsistent with the laws that we know, because let's say pre-Big Bang, when the Big Bang happened, whatever was lost its form, right? So it lost its, if it was a singularity, whatever it was, it lost that. So if we come up with a rule and say, well, nothing should lose anything, well, boom, it would have just been pre-Big Bang forever. And that whatever was the first thing would have just been forever, and that was it, right? So we can't change these rules, or else it would just be like thoughts and speculation, and it'll just be guesses basically. But so basically we accept that reality is what it is, and in reality, loss is natural, right? So now we come to, from a bigger perspective, loss is natural part of the fundamental reality of the universe. Now, the other perspective that we got to look at is you are personally afflicted, right? The loss has happened to you. What meditation has taught me, right? Just from what I've been saying, clinging on to things that are not permanent is the cause of suffering. That's one of the teachings of the Buddha. So when it comes to, let's say, my life, let's say this life, I am here, I'm living, and, I would say it's evil if somebody came and killed me. So now we have to make a distinction there. Me dying is one thing, and then how it happens is basically what makes it evil, right? So let's all agree that death is natural and necessary, right? It must happen. It's just the way that things are. Now we look at what I would consider an evil way to die, or say this action was evil, is if a sentient being through intentional harm or through an intention of harm decided to kill me, then, we say that's evil. Now, let's say, here's a thought example. Let's say I am hiking in the mountains, or you're hiking in the mountains. And, you're just walking, enjoying the view, looking out to the side, and there's a rock on top of, the mountain, and it starts to roll down. And let's say, unfortunately, you don't hear it, and it comes and it just crushes you, right? It just crushes you, and you die, painful death. And, let's say it wasn't an instant death, and it was horrible. Now let's imagine, right, that a human being, a evil garbage truck driver, wanted to punish me. So he puts me in the back of, he puts me in the back of his garbage truck, and he puts on the machine to crush me to death, right? So one mountain, the rock falls, kills me. I would not consider that evil. It was just an accident, an unfortunate accident. Of course, a tragedy still, of course. The outcome is the same, but I would say it was just an unfortunate accident. Whereas this one with the human garbage truck evil person, and I'm sorry for all the garbage truck people, I'm not really calling you out, but I'm just using it as an example. So now I say this is evil because there is the human intention. Now, if I was blind, right? This is where this question really gets its juice. If I was blind and I was deaf, right? And I couldn't feel, let's say, well, I got to feel my body, right? Let's say I had no idea whether there was no way for me to experience whether the cause of my death was because a human being did it or a sentient being did it, or if it was an unfortunate accident, right? So would I be able to internally know what evil is, right? And in that sense, would I be able to make a judgment if I was not able to see, if I was not able to hear, smell, like I just didn't have knowledge of how I died, but I know that I got crushed, my bones got crushed, my organs got crushed, and everything just combusted, that's how I passed. So from that experiential perspective, is evil just the knowledge that who created this intention? Like who started this? And that's the other thing, right? What do we want God to do? Like, what do we want God to do? Do we want it to be that we do not lose our form at all? Like we're indestructible. There's nothing that can hurt us. This is inconsistent, because if we wish that, then we're going against the fundamental reality that all things go through change, all things transform, all things come, stay for a while, and disappear. So this is a illogical wish to have from the basis of this is reality, and this is how reality works. So then the next thing is, well, we want other human beings to not have the intention to harm us, right? And this is where it gets into free will, right? And so I think God gave us free will. And, some people might say, well, yeah, and the free will to do evil, why would he allow that, right? Why would he allow us to have the will to do evil? Now, you see, this is what I've, just thinking, this is what I've come to. God gave us freedom, including to do evil things. But what God did was he put signals within us to tell us that that's not what he or she or, that's not what God wants for us. God does not want us to do that evil. And what do I mean by that? Well, and this might be, from personally. I know after the fact if I've done something evil, if I've caused harm to another being, right? It's empathy, consciousness, I know when I'm doing something wrong. And I would argue most people know when they are doing something wrong, and they have strong internal urges, whether it's before, whether it's during, whether it's after, whether it's at all those phases where you're aware and you are a little repulsed and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, right? And I think all humans, maybe not all humans, the majority of humans have this facility, this capability to understand that you are causing harm to another person. And then associated with that is like this feeling of, okay, I don't want to do this. Or later you regret it and you're like, okay, I'm going to try to not do this. Again, remorse, guilt, all these, feelings that we have that is trying to make us to do good, to treat each other well. And then there's people that don't have that, right? They don't have that capability, sociopaths, psychopaths. They don't have that ability to empathize and to understand that the pain that they're causing, the harm that they're causing is negatively affecting someone, and that they don't want that. Now, what did God do for that, right? So he made it so that we have to live in a society. If you don't have the internal signals to tell you not to do evil, then there are external signals that tell you not to do evil, right? For instance, if you are a liar and you cheat and you steal from people and people find out, they are not going to want to be around you, right? They could also retaliate. But at the very best, they're going to distance themselves from you. You're not going to receive any social benefits. You're not going to be a part of that group, right? They're going to let you know what you're doing is wrong. And if you're a person that, has some thought, even if you don't have that internal feeling, you could, through these experiences of getting social feedback, be like, okay, I have to do certain things if I want to have certain outcomes, right? And being humans, you have to live in a society. Even if you're a sociopath, psychopath, you have to live in society, right? You can't go live in the mountains and be self-sufficient. You need the light from the light company. You need, the houses to be built. You need clothes. Like you have these needs still, even if you don't have those internal emotions. And in order to get those needs met at a reasonable effort level, you need to live in society. And so in order to live in society, you have to do these things where, you can't lie and cheat to people or they're going to leave you and you're going to lose your job and your finances. And, there's all this whole social, pressure to keep you in alignment. And, sometimes obviously across social, like in one culture, this is good or bad or evil, and in another it's different. But mainly the main point is, human beings want to survive, right? This whole thing about loss, about evil being about loss is we want to be alive. We want to be cohesive. We want to have some safety. We want to have some security. And we as human beings have to facilitate that amongst ourselves, right? That's the other thing that God did, is we have to live in a society. Like, we are not strong enough as individual creatures to make it out in the wild by ourselves. Like, we are meant to be living together. And so that meant to be living together is also another, let's say, barrier or another guidelines that God has instilled in humans to not do evil. So then the question becomes, is it that we don't want this freedom? Like, is it an inability to have this much freedom to be able to do things? Or is it that we experience loss? Well, which one is it? Well, the loss we can't really say anything about, because loss, change, ending, death, all of that is a natural part of how the universe is. And then when it comes to how much freedom we have, how much free will we have, it comes upon us. God has done God's job to make sure that we don't do evil by instilling all these signals, by making us attracted to living good, by making us repulsed by negativity, by evil, right? We feel an inner repulsion towards it. And so the other thing would be, well, we don't want any of that. We don't want to put any trust in human beings and in society as a whole to govern itself, right? So it's basically like, we want God to dumb us down so much, right? To just literally restrict our freedom where we're already restricted enough, right? We already have so much restrictions on us, but we're like, we want more restrictions so that we do not have this freedom to do these things. And I think that's a bit immature, right? I tend to really believe in humans. I tend to believe in that God has given us all the signals and all the things. And if in despite of that, we are evil, right? And we commit actions that harm other beings, that is all on us. That is not a God question. It is not like, why does God allow this, right? God allows you to have freedom. Then he gave you the signals to aim this freedom towards this way, right? He wants you to do good. And so he instilled in your inner being, okay, I have to treat people well. If I don't treat people well, I will have negative inner consequences and negative outer consequences. If I treat people well, I have positive inner consequences and positive outer consequences. So he's definitely nudging us one way, right? He's like, don't be evil, right? So it's not like God is promoting evil. He's like, hey, go over here. I'm going to push you, but I will also give you the power to turn that way if you want. But there's going to be a lot of resistance. I'm going to heavily insist that you don't go this way, right? That's God. He's like, I'm going to give you the power to go this way, but I'm going to heavily insist, no, don't go this, right? Like, don't go this way, but I'm going to give you the ultimate power. You can go to the dark side if you want. I will give you that power, but I will also heavily insist, And so when I hear these questions of, hey, if God was real, why does God allow evil? And therefore, because God would allow evil, God doesn't exist. I'm like, no. God created us to live in goodness, made all the signals to push us towards goodness. And then, because he is so giving, He's given us power to override his suggestions, right? God gave us power to override God's suggestions to not do evil. So, can I complain about that? I personally can. I'm very grateful that the Creator has made this universe in such a way that I can experience this phenomenal existence that I am. All right. Thanks. Bye.